Deep in the Norfolk countryside lies a skeleton of flint and brick that tells a story of massive ego and even bigger debts. This is Baconsthorpe Castle, but don't let the name fool you. It wasn't built to withstand a royal siege. Instead, this was a high-stakes vanity project. A manor house dressed up as a fortress that eventually became a cold, damp prison for the very family that built it. Today, we're exploring the rise and spectacular fall of the Hayden family. Making your way through the gatehouse, once many times the size of the structure you see today, you will find a rather spectacular octagonal flint and brick tower. There was once a second tower, but its collapse in the 1920s marked the final days of the already crumbling castle. Leaving its rear archway large enough to carry men on horseback, you approach the earliest and most impressive part of Baconsthorpe. Once accessed via a drawbridge is the inner gatehouse. Built around 1450, it was a symbol of power and money. Silk curtains would stop the sunlight bleaching the feather beds, vaulted ceilings towering above the large fireplaces and ensuite toilets, now replaced with crumbling plaster and forlorn stonework that not only provided a grand entrance, but once supported the floors above, complete with a private chapel. Behind the gatehouse is the inner courtyard. It could once have been described as a walled village, complete with a great hall, stables, kitchens, a bakery, a brewhouse, and much more. There was also ample accommodation for not only the servants, but the family and their guests. When John Heydon I began construction in 1446, he wanted the prestige of a castle without the actual military function. He added a moat, a grand gatehouse, and towers, but these were largely symbolic. Unlike the thick, solid sandstone of Beeston that I recently covered, Baconsthorpe's walls are primarily flint rubble, which is beautiful but brittle against any serious artillery. Whilst it carries the title of castle, the evidence is clear. Baconsthorpe is technically a fortified manor house. This is not to say that Baconsthorpe was indefensible. Its moat, overlooked by towers and covered in areas with gun slits, would restrict direct access and undermining of the walls. The well within the inner courtyard provided water, and the large fish pond could supply food, now home to a pair of very friendly swans. The Heydens were new money, lawyers and wool merchants. In the 15th century, your house was your CV. By building a moat and battlements, John Heydon was telling the world he was a member of the warrior elite, even if his only real weapons were his legal documents and his sheep. You might wonder why such a prominent castle isn't mentioned in the bloody annals of the English Civil War. Whilst places like Beeston were being blown up by gunpowder, Baconsthorpe remained strangely silent. Sir John Heydon III, its owner at the time, was a high-ranking officer in the King's Army, and Baconsthorpe sat in the heart of parliamentarian Norfolk, that was under the Eastern Association. But despite being surrounded in what was enemy territory, it was never attacked. But why? Overlooking the fact that its faux battlements were no match for artillery of the era, and it would certainly have been razed to the ground within minutes, Baconsthorpe, despite its owner's allegiance, was never garrisoned. Even if it had been, it would have sat surrounded and alone with little hope of reinforcements. This lack of perceived threat saved the castle only for it to be destroyed by its owners. The family had been living beyond their means, and the war debt only worsened their situation. The final nail came in 1646 when Cromwell declared John Heydon a delinquent for his royalist ties, seizing his land and with it much of the family's wealth. Living in the main house would have been a test of endurance at the best of times. Baconsthorpe was a sprawling complex of flint and brick. Flint is a cold stone and offers almost no insulation. Despite the grand fireplaces you can still see within the ruins, heating these high-ceiling rooms against the North Sea winds would have been a Herculean task. As the family's fortunes dwindled, they could no longer afford the literal tons of fuel needed to keep the house habitable. The damp would have seeped into the tapestries, rotted the floorboards, and chilled the bones of the inhabitants. The family was selling the very roof over their heads to pay off creditors. They stripped the lead, bricks, stone, and timber from the castle, effectively turning their home into a quarry just to survive another year. They would settle in the smaller, more manageable gatehouse, and the main castle was left to decay. In the nearby St Mary's Church, you'll find Sir Christopher Hayden and one of his wives immortalised in stone, praying, calm, and seemingly wealthy beyond measure. It is a masterclass in Tudor PR. On their tombs, they are the lords of the manor. In reality, by the time these monuments were finished, the castle was a hollowed-out shell. Baconsthorpe Castle is a monument to the fragility of power. It wasn't ruined by cannons or fire, but by the cold, the damp, and the crushing weight of living beyond one's means. It remains one of the most atmospheric ruins in England. A castle that was actually a house, and a home that was actually a trap. To plan your visit and see the flint work for yourself, please see the English Heritage website.